Hi, this is Margaret Maloney, and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. Open and honest discussions with wise and skillful teachers about their experiences with life, death, and Buddhism. If you wonder how others on the path have dealt with death and dying and grief, then be sure to listen in. Everybody has a story, a perspective, and a valuable lesson to share. Embrace death, live a full life, and learn how to love impermanence. Because as my dear father used to say, nobody gets out of this alive. And welcome to Death Dhamma Ahas. Today, I'm doing a recap of my discussion with Venerable Guan Zhen. He is acting as a Buddhist chaplain in a hospital setting. And one of the things he reminds me is that, in the chaplaincy at a hospital, it's very interfaith. There might be a Christian pastor who is acting as a chaplain. There might be a Catholic priest who's acting as a chaplain. There might be a rabbi. There might be an imam. So it's very much interfaith. And each chaplain is, in theory, prepared to deal with a family, no matter what their faith is, or lack of faith if they're just looking for some type of spiritual support. But what this also reminds me of is that all chaplains are not created equal. I want to share with you what I mean by that. Years ago, a good friend of mine, her mother was dying. She was in the hospital. She was dying of cancer. And I just happened to be sitting with her one day when the chaplain came in the room. And she really wanted the chaplain to hold her hand and pray with her. And now I can understand that this poor man was so uncomfortable, not uncomfortable with prayer or with her Christian faith, because he came from Christianity as well. But what he was uncomfortable with was with being with the dying. Because although she didn't die that day, she was clearly a person who was dying. And I remember at the time I was so angry and I was judgmental. So what a great opportunity for me years later to go back and revisit that scenario and understand it more fully. But at the time, it just broke my heart because he stood at the foot of her bed. He wouldn't come near her. He stood at the foot of her bed, and then he would pray with her. But, she was just looking for a little bit more. And I recognize now that he wasn't able to deliver that at that time. Not all chaplains, no matter what faith they come from, are prepared to handle death. They are prepared to deliver spiritual care, but in a hospital situation, that might be praying for the successful outcome of your child's tonsillectomy, or praying with someone who has broken their leg. And yes, it could mean being with the terminally ill. So the right chaplain is such a blessing, no matter what faith that chaplain might come from. And Venerable Guan Zhen tells this story of what an honor it is when he's accepted by a family, no matter what their faith. And he was thinking specifically of a family, a Catholic family, who called him father. And he remembers at the time thinking, what an honor is this, that they looked at him and they saw him in his robes, and his robes do not look like the robes of a Catholic priest. And yet, that's what they called him. They called him father because in that's their tradition, that's what you call someone in that role. And so it was a wonderful exchange that he had with this family. What about our discussion around death and dying and grief? Well, as we reconnected in this conversation, we learned that we had both lost our fathers in the same year, which was 2012. It just so happened that during that year, we were in different places and we had not been in touch. And so I didn't know that he had lost his father, and he didn't know that I had lost my father. So there we were. And right away, he comes right out and makes this statement, which was so poignant. He He says, when your loved ones pass away, it's like an arrow shot in your heart. And it is. And those of you who have been through this, you know it. If you haven't been through it, I'm sorry, but one day you're going to have that feeling. He also discusses that this is part of our path to enlightenment. It's normal to have this feeling of the arrow being shot in our hearts, and that there is a very physical reaction that occurs to us when we're grieving, and especially in that immediate moment of realization, whether it's because you're there and you see someone die, or because later you learn about it, there is this visceral feeling. I return again to him saying an arrow shot through your heart, because to me that's just really the best and strongest description. And he also reminds us that you think that you have control, but you don't. And this can be true over our physical being, and it can also be true over our emotional being. And if you have already gone through this and felt this, the good news is this makes you be able to be more helpful to others. He attributes the grief that he experienced at the loss of his father as being one of the elements that helps to make him be the right chaplain to be with a family, because he can, with honesty, say that he has felt the sadness. And while he would never say, I know exactly how you feel, because it is a little different for all of us, he can honestly know that he has felt that sadness. And I think that the people that he works with can feel that sincerity. I'm sure that they can. Absolutely. I've never known him to be anything less than sincere in his statements and discussions of, other things that we've discussed over the years. He remembers that when he found out that his father had died and he was living at a monastery, he is so appreciative of how the other monks gave him space. And he says that this was the best support that he could have, was that they gave him the space to allow him to grieve. We also can give ourselves and others that space and support in allowing others to grieve, or allowing ourselves to grieve. And what that means, if we are helping someone else, is that so much of what we want to say and do might not be helpful. And so much of what we might want to say and do is about making ourselves feel better about the situation. But to truly help someone in their grief isn't about making yourself feel better in the situation. It is really about giving them what is useful. And it's that support, that space. Sometimes that space just means silence. He also reminds us of why we are really sad. See, it's not about wondering what happened to your deceased loved one. You know they're dead. And Buddhism teaches you that death is going to come and that death is a transition. So the reason that we are really sad isn't because we are worried about what has happened to our loved one. We are sad because we have a loss. And that's okay. And it's important to recognize that and to be honest about the fact. I feel sad because I have lost my father or my friend or my sibling. That's why I feel sad. Impermanence, recognizing, embracing, understanding impermanence is what will help us so that we aren't in denial, so that we don't fight and struggle. Don't fight and struggle. Remember, this day will come, and it's about impermanence. And it's okay that you are sad because you feel the loss. That is fine. It is, again, part of our journey to enlightenment is to go through the difficult feelings and the difficult experiences. I love the way Venerable Guan Zhen expressed it during our discussion. He said, enlightenment is about having the feelings. He said, only a stone has no feelings. Feelings are a transition point for our growth and to move forward. And another way that he said it was, he said, little difficult experience, little bit of enlightenment. Big difficult experience, big experience of enlightenment. And that was just beautifully expressed. He mentioned the importance of time. And we had a little discussion about the fact that time is both our friend and not our friend. And when I say that, I realize that's not exactly maybe the best way to phrase it, because time is time, right? So for me to say time is our friend, but also not our friend, is putting too much, it's giving time too much power and personification. But time allows you to be with your feelings and emotions so that you understand them more fully. And so that you can look back and understand and appreciate the relationship that you had with your deceased loved one. Yes, it is annoying, but time really is a healer. As much as we may not like it, especially for those of us who maybe come from the culture of, fast food, fast fashion, instant gratification. There isn't instant grief gratification. If you think there is, I would suggest to you that you are stuffing things down and they're going to come visit you again one day. Time is going to help, and we're going to need to go through our experiences and allow time to carry us onward. Finally, it comes back to compassion and loving kindness. If you are with someone and you can see that they are going through the dying process, you want to be as compassionate to them as possible, because there are going to be times when they might be irritable, crabby, afraid. Be compassionate towards them, and be compassionate to yourself. And again, understand, you are not a rock. Don't be a rock. Only a stone has no feelings. And the way that Venerable Guan Zhen said it to me, which was so beautifully expressed, compassion is like water. It brings life everywhere. This has been the Death Dhamma podcast with Margaret Maloney. Thank you for being here. Your reviews and comments are greatly appreciated. And please come find me on margaretmaloney.com. MargaretMeloni. And don't forget to check out Carpooling with Death, How Living with Death Will Make You Stronger, Wiser, and Fearless. Available in all your favorite formats over on Amazon. And most importantly, may you be well. May you be happy. May you be safe, at ease, and free from suffering. Bye for now.